Weezing would just shut off Prankster, Koraidon would just outspeed Whimsicott, knock you out. But because you've got that Focus Sash, you can at least tank an attack, and even with your Prankster shut off, you can still set up that Tailwind.
Yeah, or even set up something like a light screen if you think that's going to be even better into all of the special attackers that are on this team. But for now, it is going to be our wonderful box mascots of Koraidon and Miraidon staring down each other, and their Fairy-type partner Pokemon of choice.
Okay, so this is interesting because Miraidon obviously does not have that Electric Train set up, right? So this is the advantage of having that Weezing. Prankster is turned off. It looks like it's going to be the, ooh, okay, Fire Terra, just opting for potentially targeting the Miraidon. Of course, you can target Whimsicott, but that would just bring it down to its Focus Sash. So once again, I think the Sash is actually such a big deal here, and that's why Z could lead this a little bit more confidently. From Z's end, you can obviously go for a Volt Switch to pivot out and try to maybe knock out Weezing and then bring Miraidon back out. You could just say, you know what, I'm just going to launch a Draco Meteor immediately right into your Koraidon. It's not going to knock you out, but it's still going to do a lot of damage. Weezing's in this awkward spot right now where it truthfully is just not really like putting on that much offensive pressure. At best, you've got that Dazzling Gleam, and you can see Sam's hovering it.
Well, I mean, if anything, it's going to help you at least get a little bit of damage down onto the Miraidon. It breaks the Focus Sash of the Whimsicott to make it a little bit easier to clean up.
Yep.
As we see the Terra committed into this game, this Koraidon is going to get a little bit of a boost there to its Fire-type attacks with that extra Fire Terra, and you're also going to be getting rid of your weakness to something like a Dazzling Gleam or the Moonblast on the other side. The Flame Charge in the Miraidon, you can see here, having the resist is going to still be so important, but I feel like it's really about this secondary effect of this Flame Charge, being able to get that speed boost. Koraidon takes so much damage, though, from that Electro Drift.
Tailwind comes out as well. I think Sam may be hoping for Z to go for a Terra there on that Miraidon. Flame Charge does not do very much damage, and Dazzling Gleam does okay damage, but Z has set up Tailwind now. This Koraidon is Terra. You're just one attack away from getting knocked out, so I think Z is probably very happy about that trade. I think this is the awkward thing about this Koraidon, where it like doesn't pressure the Miraidon with the one-hit knockout without something like that Life Orb item, right? And so like Z recognizing, you know what, I don't even need to Terra. Even if you collision course me, I'm gonna survive, right? And so it means I get Tailwind up, it means I get a lot of damage in your Koraidon. And I think this is what makes Weezing so difficult to use, in that like it just like kind of soaks up a little bit, but isn't doing a ton of damage. And it's like the only move that you really have to click with it right now is like that Dazzling Gleam, right? And so it doesn't feel great if you're taking these like really, really big damage trades. And so Z off to a really strong start here.
I mean, you could Will-O-Wisp the Whimsicott if you really wanted. I don't know, just like saying that, you know, that's some possibilities here, but fortunately for this Koraidon, it does not have anything else that it can do in this game number one. It's going to be the target of that KO from the Miraidon, and yeah, I mean, it's tough, because even this Weezing is going to have to take a Moonblast here, and like I feel like Whimsicott is helping too.
All right, Dazzling Gleam comes out, but it doesn't even knock out Miraidon. So Sam had the opportunity, of course, to like consider protecting there with the Koraidon, but Gleam would have not knocked out either, so Miraidon would have been able to just go for an Electro Drift into that slot the next turn. So Brute Bonnet hits the field now, but this is not exactly a very offensive duo, right? And the Whimsicott here actually is just not threatened very much. Like, it resists all of these offensive attacks, basically. And so Whimsicott, of course, threatening with those super effective Moonblasts as well. Even with no Prankster, it's totally okay because it set up that Tailwind. Z, of course, still has Terra available to them as well. So I feel like Z's off to a really strong start. And yeah, that was just not really a great trade for Koraidon in the beginning of this game. And I can't stress how big of an item Focus Sash is for Z's Whimsicott here. If you don't have that Sash, Tailwind is so much harder to set up, and then Sam can overwhelm with speed control and outspeed you with +1 Koraidon with Flutter Mane. Not going to be the case, though. Miraidon, though, finally going to pivot out.
I mean, at this point, I feel like you know that the Weezing is going to be an easier piece to clean up. If you expected something like a Sucker Punch, then that's another way that you can evade that. So Miraidon getting out of dodge, the Ogerpon coming in at a perfect time. Like, you just get to sit here in the sun. You're not going to take a whole lot of damage from the Dazzling Gleam because, one, it's a Weezing, you know, and two, you're going to be okay with that if you're a bulky Ogerpon. So yeah, I feel like Ogerpon now gets to play in the sun.
Yeah. Sucker Punch now does minimal damage, and that's the thing, this is not an offensive duel, right? So that switch made a lot of sense from Z's end. Ogerpon is just so safe to switch in. There's just no damage right now coming out from Sam's end, right? Like Brute Bonnet, what does it really want to do? Ideally, click Spore, Rage Powder. Spore not working against either Whimsicott or Ogerpon here. Weezing finally gets a taunt off, but like at what cost, right? Like Whimsicott is happy to just keep clicking Moonblast, to be honest. And so Tailwind does peter out. You do get that free switch it into Flutter Mane. The question is, can it actually do enough, right? Because how do you actually do enough damage to this Ogre Pawn right now?
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe you are able to go for like Terra Fairy, but the Terra was already used in this game.
Yeah.
And so you kind of just are stuck either going for a single target Moonblast. And in fact, a lot of the Flutter Manes nowadays actually don't even carry Dazzling Gleam. So it's all single target attacks.
Yeah.
Outside of like, what, Icy Wind?
You've got Icy Wind. It's like Shadow Ball's not bad in Ogre Pawn, but like you're Focus Sash Flutter Mane, right? This isn't something like Choice Specs, right? Or Booster Energy. And so I wouldn't expect it to even knock out the Ogre Pawn. Ogre Pawn obviously threatens Flutter Mane with a lot of damage. I do think like Sam maybe has like a slight window of opportunity here where you do have something fairly offensive on the field, but Flutter Mane essentially only gets to take 2 attacks, right? Ogre Pawn is just absolutely going to crush it in terms of damage as well. So Sam going for the Protect here on the Weezing. Ogre Pawn going to Spiky Shield as well, just to kind of scout out for what Sam wants to do. And I think this trade makes sense. Z still, of course, got a 4th Pokemon in the back and Terra available.
Yeah, especially with the Miraidon also being able to come back in. And once the sun is gone, I guess, well, no, I guess the Flutter Mane would actually still be quite fast.
Yeah, I would definitely expect Flutter to be the fastest. Sun, of course, fading here. And Z now gets a free switch, and it is going to be that Iron Hands. And let me tell you, a Water Terra Assault Vest Iron Hands looks really, really scary right now.
Well, that Terra is certainly a great way to be able to deal with all of the incoming attacks, but it's the Assault Vest for me when you look at this Flutter and the Weezing. How do you actually break through this Pokemon?
Yeah, and this is the problem where, like, Sam, I just feel like almost all the damage actually came from Koraidon in this game, and so you see him, like, in this awkward position. The Weezing, of course, does have that Will-O-Wisp, but you don't want to click it here because, of course, the Ogre Pawn could just pressure with Follow Me. So Sam's like, look, I don't think Shadow Ball is going to KO your Ogre Pawn, but let me just try to do as much damage as possible, and then I'm not going to Will-O-Wisp because you might go for Follow Me with Ogre Pawn, right? I think from Z's end, it makes a lot of sense to Water Terra and just attack with your Iron Hands. Ogre Pawn here could choose to Follow Me. It could just honestly go for an Ivy Cudgel as well. Truthfully, I think even if you burnt the Iron Hands alone could close out this game, but Fake Out goes into Weezing, and honestly, that does reasonable damage as well. I don't expect the Shadow Ball to KO, but let's see. Yeah,
no, not even close. Yeah, that was going to take another one for sure. With the Ivy Cudgel in response, Flutter Mane already gets taken down to its Focus Sash. And even if it wasn't that, like, imagine if it was a double attack into the Flutter, like, for sure the Heavy Slam is going to pick it up. Like, it might even be a one-hit knockout from the Iron Hands. Like,
yeah.
That's a lot of damage.
Yeah, the question that I have is, I think this, like, shows the way Z planned this game, right? Like, late game, Water Terra Assault Vest Iron Hands looks so insanely powerful into Sam's team. The way that you actually deal with the Iron Hands is actually the Brute Bonnet. The Brute Bonnet has the ability to pressure with Spore. It can hit it with the Seed Bomb as well, right? But Iron Hands into the rest of the team looks really, really scary, especially with that Water Terra, right? Koraidon Collision Course maybe does up to half, probably not even half, right? So Sam's going to protect here with Flutter Mane, Ogre Pawn's going to Spiky Shield, but yeah, I just like don't think you can beat this Iron Hands.
No, I mean, you could still try your best. Like, here's the Will-O-Wisp into the Iron Hands at least.
It hit at least.
Neuter some of the damage that's going to be coming into the Weezing, but I feel like at the same time, Heavy Slam is, yeah, it's going to be a knockout.
Yeah.
Maybe you even just like get the Ivy Cudgel.
Unfortunately, a burn doesn't save you from 1 HP of damage. And so I think, but you know, when a game like this feels like it is essentially over, it's still good for you to kind of think about, okay, what should I do differently in game 2? And to me, it's like, it's tough. I don't know. Like, I think Brute Bonnet lead would be interesting with Weezing because you pressure Spore, but then I guess what Z could do is just like Volt Switch, go out into the Ogre Pawn. So Shadow Ball finally KOs the Ogre Pawn, but it's like, yeah, this Iron Hands is just so set up for success. And like Weezing has been on the field this entire game. It's got a little bit of damage from Dazzling Gleam, which is like cool, right? But that's basically it. The taunt didn't really provide any value. The Will-O-Wisp, not really that important because Z was able to get enough damage on the board, right? And like Flutter Mane is still just inherently so frail, and now Z gets to bring out that Miraidon immediately. So this felt like a game that was, I wouldn't say decided on turn 1, but it just felt like Sam was so far behind immediately that it would have been really difficult for him to win.
I wonder what you do though, maybe if you instead go for a taunt turn 1 into the Whimsicott. You don't get the actual Tailwind set up. Your Koraidon gets to have the speed control because you went for the Flame Charge anyway. Yeah,
I think the problem is Whimsicott's still naturally faster than the Weezing, and so your taunt would go off after the Tailwind. Like,
That's true.
Yeah, so even though Prankster is shut off, like, unfortunately, I think, yeah, you, like, the Tailwind actually seems, I'm trying to think, like, it just seems impossible to deny, truthfully, because in order to shut off Prankster, you need the Weezing out on the field. But if Weezing's out on the field, then and to knock out Whimsicott, you need 2 attacks into it, right? So once again, we talk about small adaptations. Yeah, totally, right? And the Focus Sash alone completely changes this matchup. Sam has probably played this matchup a billion times until the Covert Cloak Whimsicott set. And against Covert Cloak Whimsicott, I think this works a lot more effectively. But into non-Covert Cloak Whimsicott, you have to change your game plan, right? And I think Sam basically just never had enough damage out on the field. You can also think about what are the other damage dealers that he can bring into this matchup. Chiyu is one option. But Chiyu feels really bad when it's Choice Scarf, and Miraidon resists the fire type attacks as well, so that doesn't feel really great. I think maybe a Flutter Mane lead could make a lot of sense because you pressure the Miraidon immediately, might force a Terror out of it. Something like Flutter Mane plus Koraidon and just say, you know what, I need to put on a lot of offensive pressure immediately. Another approach could be Brute Bonnet, I think did very little in that last game. If you have Brute Bonnet next to Weezing, you can put things to sleep, or you can use it to redirect attacks away from something like a Koraidon. But yeah, I don't know. I think Weezing just honestly didn't accomplish anything in that last game, and it's mainly because of the Focus Sash on Whimsicott.
Yeah, I really like your call out of going Flutter Koraidon. I think you could have even Chiyu in the back. Leverage, maybe you expect that Z is going to be able to get the Tailwind set up, but then you have Icy Wind, you have Flame Charge, you have just additional burst power from both of those Pokemon. I like that game plan a lot better as well. Yeah,
and I think Raging Bolt's an interesting part of the equation where it can be used into the Assault Vest Iron Hands specifically, and I think that's something you have to game plan for as well. But it is going to be an adaptation this time around, Brute Bonnet hitting the field immediately. But this is a little bit scary because both of these Pokemon are quite weak to Fairy type damage.
That is true. I mean, even if you are able to force out a Terra from the Miraidon, I feel okay, Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam. I love that for me. But I expect whenever Koraidon hits the field, maybe one of the things that I feel can be problematic about this Pokemon is Koraidon almost always needs to Terra.
Yeah.
So it's I see Koraidon, I'm gonna go for the Terra here. Even if Z does go for the Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam, and Koraidon's going to resist that now, it kind of doesn't matter because you know the Brute Bonnet is susceptible in that way.
Yeah, honestly, if you're Z, I think you could just Tailwind Draco Meteor Brute Bonnet because this Brute Bonnet doesn't have Protect, right? And everything, unless you're worried about a Flutter or Weezing switch in, that might be the reason you don't go for it. I think a lot of times when people lead Whimsicott Miraidon, they Tailwind Volt Switch, and the idea is, okay, if I Volt Switch, it'll be pretty safe. It covers for anything that can switch in. But Tailwind Draco here is pretty oppressive. It's so tempting to be Dazzling Gleam, but like you said, Rose, you pretty much always have to Terra, it feels with that Koraidon. You would expect Koraidon to Terra or Protect here, right? Yep. So to get ahead of that, I think you could try to Draco. I'm curious if Brute Bonnet has any chance of surviving a Choice Specs Draco in terrain, but my guess is no. And if you Tailwind Draco, you KO, that's not a bad trade, and it is just going to be the Rage Powder to start.
Yeah, I don't think there's many things that can actually survive that. If you actually think about that, the vibes tell me that one. But the Flame Charge into the Miraidon, maybe once again expecting some type of Terastallization to come out. I see the Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam. Maybe I raise you this extra Flame Charge. But yeah, Brute Bonnet just gets knocked out in one hit by that Draco Meteor. And this Whimsicott is still free and clear to go for whatever it wants to with the Focus Sash intact.
Yeah, and it's just Draco Moonblast. And this makes a lot of sense, right? It's if you for some reason didn't Terra Koraidon, well, Draco knocks out the bot in anyway. Moonblast covers for it. Sam's one opportunity there maybe could have been hard switching into a Flutter Mane. But yeah, I think I like what both players are going for here. I think Sam was look, at least this time around, I've protected my main damage dealer in Koraidon. Brute Bonnet didn't do very much for me in the last game anyway, and he did bring that Raging Bolt adaptation as well. So yeah. I like how Sam has kind of thought about this. I think what's scary is you are still facing Tailwind right now, right? Whimsicott can set up that Tailwind, but I think Sam's idea is, well, I don't care if you set up Tailwind if I get to, +1 speed, +2 speed, and I have Icy Wind speed control from Flutter Mane. So I think he's definitely in a much better spot coming out of turn 1 than the previous game. And the awkward thing about locking in a Draco Meteor from Z's end is now you have to consider I could either Draco Koraidon or switch out the Miraidon.
I feel like you've gotten a lot of mileage, though, out of Miraidon already, but it just kind of depends. Do you have anything in the back that you feel can tank any of this incoming damage? Whimsicott is actually kind of a way to do that. The light screen, to be able to limit the amount of offense that this Flutter Mane is able to do, it actually allows this Miraidon to be able to resist that hit. And so this Miraidon actually gets a chance to stick around a little bit longer. Flame Charge going into the Whimsicott, both Pokemon here for the next turn.
Yeah, so opting for the light screen rather than Tailwind, and Z saying, you know what, I think I'm going to get outsped anyway, and the light screen is crucial. It survives the Moonblast. Draco comes out, and that does so much damage still. I think how Z's thinking about this is, look, you're actually boosting up your speed fairly quickly. I know my Iron Hands is going to be slower than you anyway in this endgame, but I think, yeah, Sam making some really great adaptations here, and I'm just thinking, like, more long-term, this will be interesting when the Iron Hands comes out, Water Terrors, and you have to deal with Raging Bolt potentially later, but Z now, of course, has the ability to finally set up Tailwind, but you're still going to be outpaced by Koraidon at this point.
Yeah, 2 Flame Charge boosts here is going to make sure that the Koraidon is faster than the Miraidon, and on top of that, if you really wanted to hit them in the Icy Wind, you could. If Sam is not 100% confident on that, you can go for the Protect as well, but I feel like you see the KOs in your sights, and who knows how long you're going to be able to have this Koraidon for.
Yeah, but I think this is just much better use of Koraidon, and I think Whimsicott going for Encore here makes sense. Once again, you don't expect to get mileage out of Tailwind, you already set up that light screen, so Encore means that you at least know Koraidon has to be locked into Flame Charge. It can't go for that Flare Blitz or Collision Course, which are generally stronger moves, and so Z's going to give up both Pokemon here, but they do, of course, have the Terra advantage available to them.
I love that Z has saved the terrestrialization for something else, but that's where almost the adjustment from Sam comes in even handier. You know, if it is expected that the Iron Hands is going to be in the back, then you know Terra Water is there.
So let's see, is it just going to be Iron Hands Ogerpon? I think that would make a lot of sense, because if you look at this matchup, like Water Urshifu doesn't feel like something you ever bring in. Friggraph doesn't really feel that great either, unless you want to set up Trick Room, so it indeed is going to be this combo. And that Encore actually being really crucial, because it means you can't just like burst with the Koraidon now, right? No Flare Blitz available to you. You have to click that Flame Charge. You're locked in for another 2 turns as well. And the light screen actually pretty valuable as well in dealing with these special attackers. So really like Z's decision to just set that up a little bit earlier, and probably even got more mileage than expected, given that it allowed Miraidon to survive Moonblast.
I like this too, though. Sam could just switch the Koraidon off the field. That's one way to be able to get rid of the Encore, while knowing that you still also have the Icy Wind available for later. The issue with that is that you need this final Pokemon in the back as healthy as possible to be able to deal with these other 2 physical attacks.
Totally, yeah. I think like this turn from Z's end, it's like, you know, Koraidon is locked into an attack, so you can pretty easily target that slot. It can't protect, right? Flutter Mane here does have the potential, of course, to go for a protect, and so Koraidon is going to pivot out. Agree with you, Rose. I think like the switch here is something that can allow you to conserve Koraidon later on, but does Z capitalize off of this, right? You could double up into the Flutter Mane, just get a knockout into that slot right now immediately, but there's the risk of attacking into, of course, a Protect there on the Flutter Mane, as we're going to see the Terra come out, and it is going to be on the Iron Hands. That Water Terra so good defensively, but hey, Raging Bolt is going to be a pretty good solution to at least threaten this with damage.
And especially when the sun is still going to be active, and you can also reset it later once that does expire because you still have the Koraidon. A Spiky Shield comes out, so there isn't going to be damage that actually sticks onto either of Z's Pokemon. So what does this Iron Hands actually get a chance to do instead? As a reminder, it's got Drain Punch, Low Kick, and Heavy Slam, and that is an insane amount of damage from a Low Kick.
So much damage. This Raging Bolt obviously can't protect either, and so I think Z going for a great play there, saying, look, like, even if you double up onto my Iron Hands, I know I'm gonna like take these attacks really, really well, so if you stay in with Koraidon, I knock you out. If you switch out, I get a lot of damage off. So Raging Bolt is nice to have against Iron Hands. The question to me is, like, this turn, obviously, Ogerpon went for the Spiky Shield, so you do threaten with something like an Icy Wind plus a Draco Meteor, or you can see the hover of the Thunderbolt. I just think the light screen might be game-saving here, honestly. Like, if Icy Wind Draco doesn't KO here, I think that's just game over. So let's see.
Icy Wind first. At least you'll also drop the speeds for the Koraidon later, since it had to give up all of those Flame Charge boosts. But it's just about the follow-up, and we all also know that Draco Meteor can miss. It does not this time, as it connects into the Ogerpon with a critical hit. So we actually don't even know if that light screen saved this Ogerpon.
Oh, Ogerpon feigns their Iron Hands now in a 1v3. It is really, really good. Now a 1v2. Like, I think Hands can pull this off, honestly, because you're just not doing a ton of damage. I mean, it's basically going to be like Collision Course and Shadow Ball, right? Or Collision Course and Moonblast. But you can go for Shadow Ball to fish for some potential drops, for example. Iron Hands will be able to heal back a little bit from Drain Punch. Heavy Slam is going to be a KO on a Flutter Mane. So one of the things that can work in Sam's favor here is, do you predict who Iron Hands attacks, and do you protect that slot? If so, it buys you an extra turn to work with. But it's going to be a close finish here. I mean, Hands is a really, really good Pokemon here. And I do wonder if the Ogerpon would have survived that Draco Meteor otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, the speed boost here, there is no more terrain anymore for this Iron Hand, so it does lose that Quirk Drive boost, but it's still so bulky. So let's see. It is going to be a Flutter Mane going for the Protect, so where did Z actually target this damage?
Yeah, I think the double Protect here means that you like guarantee stalled a turn in the final turn of Light Screen, so your Moonblast will deal more damage. But the downside of this, it means that you now just like give up Koraidon, right? Like you go Collision Course Moonblast. I don't know, like I think Hands might be able to pull this off. So Collision Course plus, yep, that Moonblast. You're gonna double up into that slot. I would expect this to bring Hands to around 50%. That Moonblast actually did a bit more than I expected. Let's see.
Okay, so Collision Course follow-up, I mean, it's a very powerful move, and you're not dropping any of your stats. I actually think this might look good. The Drain Punch into the Koraidon is going to give this Iron Hands just a little bit of recovery. But this Flutter Mane is doing more damage because the Light Screen is gone as well. Yeah, that damage actually a little bit more impressive than I thought. I was expecting Hands to maybe have about like 45-ish%, but and Hands wins this now.
Yeah, this is very safe. Just 2 Moonblasts and you're good. It doesn't obviously heal back enough from that Drain Punch, and so Sam really figuring it out here. Moonblast comes out, and that doesn't knock out Hands, but Flutter Mane's got Focus Sash. That's all that it needed. And 1 HP is the difference between Sam winning and losing this one.
Wow, we get to go to a game number 3. How exciting is that? Some great adjustments coming through from Sam, and we will just have to see how this match actually concludes.
Oh my goodness, that critical hit onto the Ogerpon though. I think if Ogerpon basically survives, that's the difference between 1 HP and 0 HP, right? And so, yeah, there was the photosynthesis boost, of course, but with Light Screen being up, I would reckon that Ogerpon would survive that without the critical hit. And so, yeah, I think if you're Z, you gotta take a step back and be like, okay, you know, like things, I think, could have gone very, very well if that Draco just didn't crit me. And you also saw some of Sam's adjustments, right? We saw the adaptation to the Brute Bonnet lead. We saw the Weezing being dropped. We saw Raging Bolt being brought. So then if you're Z, you can think about, well, maybe, like, do I want to mix up any of my Pokemon choices? And I don't know. Like, I think Water Urshifu I would never bring into this matchup personally. I think you're into Sun. It just doesn't feel good really into anything. And I don't know if Farigiraf really feels that great either. Like, I think Farigiraf makes sense in the context of, like, you wanting to play Farigiraf Iron Hands under Trick Room. So, like, maybe there's a world in which you, like, lead Miraidon Farigiraf and then, like, Volt Switch out to get Trick Room up and then have Farigiraf and Iron Hands out under Trick Room. So I think that's the context in which Farigiraf can come in. But if you're Z, maybe you're like, you know what, I'm happy to run it back. I saw, like, your adaptations, but I think if I survive that Draco, I probably just win this one.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can gauge anything from the facial reactions, and I feel like Z did look a little disappointed by seeing the critical hit there, so I don't know, who knows? But let's get into our game number 3 as we see an adjustment coming out from Z. It will be that Iron Hands next to the Miraidon, and Brute Bonnet next to Koraidon for Sam.
So Iron Hands hits the field immediately. This means that you have Fake Out available to you, and you just have all the damage output from Iron Hands immediately. Of course, Electric Terrain also stopping the Spore pressure from the Brute Bonnet. So turn 1, you do threaten with something like Fake Out Draco Meteor, but Sam saw Draco happen last time, so he might go Protect, switch into Flutter Mane. Okay,
kind of
so
seems like he's thinking about it.
Flutter's definitely in the back. The question is, yeah, do you contemplate Protect, switch into Flutter? I think Z also is aware that Flutter might be in the back, so Z might go for a Volt Switch instead, right? Instead of a Draco Meteor. Obviously, there's the threat of just Fairy, Terra, Dazzling Gleam here as well, so I think this is going to be a very explosive turn 1 right away. And if you're Z and you lock into Draco and Flutter hits the field, you're actually in really, really bad shape. And so I'm curious to see if Z gets a little bit scared of clicking Draco Meteor this time around.
I feel like it's so safe, though, for you to just be able to go for, like Electro Drift into everything. I don't know. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but I feel like it's just go for the Electro Drift. You know, you can get guaranteed damage. Iron Hands is going to fake out something regardless. I don't know, that would be my call.
Yeah, I think you could probably fake out Miraidon Drift into the Brute Bonnet, but it's just going to be the Rage Powder here coming out from the Brute Bonnet immediately. No fake out, of course, from Iron Hands. No Water Terra either, so Flame Charge to start the game, and that's actually decent damage, but still only 45% at the end of the day. And it is just Draco.
Wow.
No Drift. Just goes for it, immediately eliminates Brute Bonnet once again. Now Hands is going to get a huge attack off here. If it's Drain Punch, it'll heal so much of the damage that it just took.
Yeah, it's just low kick though. So maybe even, oh my gosh. I was going to say potentially covering for the fact that Brute Bonnet just might like get missed with Draco Meteor, but that is such a huge amount of damage for Z in that first turn. You're absolutely right. This has been explosive.
Yeah, this reminds me of game 1, right? It's like you lose a Pokemon immediately and your Terra gets committed as well. This is where I was saying, like, because it was Draco low kick, if it was just Protect, switch into Flutter, turn 2 you have Icy Wind, Fire Terra, Flare Blitz pressure, like, Sam is in a completely different position, but now you've given up your Terra, you've lost a Pokemon, and you've lost 75% of your health, right? So that's the difference between going for Sam's play on turn 1 and, of course, Protect, plus switch into Flutter Mane. But Sam may have been thinking, well, I think you might go for Electro Drift this time around, right? And so Z doesn't go for the Fake Out either. I love the decision to just play really, really aggressively, and I think Z is in phenomenal shape right now.
Even just preserves the Iron Hands for later.
Oh, there's Furgraf!
Wow!
So could be a Trick Room setup now, right?
Okay.
Because you have gotten rid of the Brute Bonnet, which I think is like a little bit annoying to deal with because, of course, it does threaten with like Seed Bomb and Sucker Punch. Moonblast does just get the knockout there immediately. Another critical hit coming out. ZZ being like,
Oh, I know Sam is also grimacing there because that does mean that this Furgraf is open to just take the Flame Charge. Of course, it handles it a little bit better because you did get that defense boost from the Electric Seed on terrain, but that is a very difficult KO for Z to have to play around now.
Yeah, it is the free switch him back into Iron Hands now, so you can Water Terra, Fake Out, of course. You know, the scary thing here, though, is, once again, if you go for that Water Terra, you have to deal with this Raging Bolt. The upside is the Furgraf, this time being brought, blocks that Thunderclap, which otherwise, of course, would have priority even under Trick Room. So I think here you could go Fake Out, Water Terra with the Iron Hands, and then set up Trick Room. And this is what I was talking about in terms of adjusting to Furgraf. And then under Trick Room, I think Z should be pretty well positioned. The only awkward thing is like Furgraf isn't going to do very much damage into the Raging Bolt in the back, but that's fine. I think as long as you have a little bit of HP to work with Iron Hands is trading so positively. So it is going to be that Water Terra.
Water Terra helping against those fire type attacks in the Koraidon. And of course, you saw that Assault Vest, which is going to help you against the Flutter Mane, but I feel like even just being able to go for the Fake Out here, it's possible that Furgraf actually doesn't set up the Trick Room at all. Maybe just try to go for a KO onto the Koraidon, as Iron Hands does still take a pretty significant amount of damage from that, but he just opts better for it, thinks, let's go for the speed control. Now Furgraf will for sure be able to get the knockout onto the Koraidon if it doesn't protect.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting because I do think Raging Bolt is quite an excellent Pokemon for Sam to have in this endgame, right? But like you are threatening right now a knockout onto either slot. The thing is, if you want to knock out Flutter Mane, you have to double up onto it with a Heavy Slam and a Psychic / Foul Play, right? So if Flutter Mane protects on a double up, that's a disaster. You could just split your damage, Heavy Slam Flutter Mane and Psychic into Koraidon. I think that's probably the most consistent. You'll probably lose Iron Hands, but then it's going to be 1 HP Flutter Mane plus Raging Bolt against Furgraf plus Fire Ogre Palm, presumably from Z's end. So it's going to be Drain Punch. My other question is there any chance Drain Punch heals this enough to survive Moonblast? Like, you gain such minimal HP, my guess is still no. But a survival would probably be game-winning right now.
Who's to say? We've seen a lot of critical hits, so we might not even be able to tell the difference here. But Psychic going to break the Focus Sash of the Flutter Mane. Sam, after that knockout onto the Koraidon, is down to just his final 2 Pokemon. And as the Moonblast goes out, Iron Hands actually does survive!
Oh!
Finally, some good luck going Z's way.
Oh my goodness, I mean, that's why you Drain Punch. You get the little bit of extra recovery. I'm actually curious whether or not that HP mattered at the end of the, like, how much it healed from that Drain Punch, was enough. But that's why you go for the Drain Punch rather than Heavy Slam. And I think with that survival, it feels pretty game-defining. I don't want to call the game 100% yet, but now you have so much damage, like one more huge attack out from the Iron Hands, right? And so yeah, you can just go for that Helping Hand, which increases your damage so much. You can target that Raging Bolt slot. Here's Helping Hand plus the low kick, and
oh my goodness! The Raging Bolt is able to survive as well to deliver a finishing blow into the Furgraf with the Thunderbolt. And hang on a second, this Flutter Mane getting the knockout of the Iron Hands too. Zia's just down to 1 more Pokemon left.
Oh my goodness! If the Iron Hands had also just targeted the Flutter Mane there, Flutter Mane would have fainted, the Bolt would have knocked out Furgraf, and then you would have had a 2v1, but goes all in on the Helping Hand low kick, and the clutch, this game has been about clutch survivals. Now there's no more terrain out on the field. There is still, of course, this Fire Ogre Pond waiting in the back, but is it enough?
It's so hard. At least you know that the Raging Bolt can't actually protect.
Yeah.
So it is a Pokemon that you know will be able to, like, you will be able to actually get an attack off into. But Z can also go for a Spiky Shield. Could try to just go for the knockout onto the Flutter Mane anyway. Oh, this is so hard.
Yeah, it's basically like Raging Bolt should actually be slower than Ogre Pond, right? So in Trick Room, there's 2 turns of Trick Room left. Like, you can always Draco into it. Sam is basically like, look, if you Ivy Cudgel into me, like this probably just wins me the game, right? But if Z targets the Raging Bolt here, then you just Ivy Cudgel into Fluttermane. Okay, Fluttermane protects. Let's see. First of all, does Draco Meteor hit?
Ooh,
It
Draco
does.
Meteor is going to connect onto the Ogerpon, and that does a good amount of damage, about 60% here, as Raging Bolt special
Oh,
attack
and
is
Ivy
going
Cudgel's
to
gonna
fall.
protect!
Ivy Cudgel! Fluttermane protects itself from that. There's only one more turn of Trick Room remaining. Raging Bolt, even with that -2 special attack, probably can get through this Ogerpon, no problem.
Okay, so now, I mean, the thing is, it's like, maybe you can survive another Draco, but then you have to survive Draco into Thunderclap, right? And so, yeah, like Z, of course, if Z targeted Raging Bolt there, would have gotten the knockout. Then Fluttermane needs a double protect under the Trick Room, but oh, Sam opting to think about going for a double protect. Okay, it doesn't get it with the Fluttermane.
All right, so no double protect here from the Flutter is going to leave it vulnerable. Draco Meteor is going to protect onto the Ogerpon, and it is just so close. Raging Bolt is at -4 special attack now as the Ogerpon goes for the Ivy Cudgel to finish off this Fluttermane once and for all. And this is so close,
-4
Aaron.
Thunderclap into Ogerpon. Do you think it'll get the knockout? I would think so. I would think so, but I'm not 100%
so.
sure. Here it comes.
No way!
Are you kidding me?
And actually get the KO onto the Raging Bolt. And the pop-off is deserved. Oh my goodness, what a close game.
That was unbelievable. Clutch survival after clutch survival after clutch survival. Iron Hands has just enough HP to take the turn. The Raging Bolt survives Helping Hand low kick, but in the end, Z is the one to win with Ogerpon hanging on from 3 different attacks from the Ogerpon.
What a series. Holy cow. And this was